Hello. This episode has been a while coming, partly because of the usual thing of me not having a lot of time to devote to this, but also I actually have devoted quite a lot of time and effort to this episode already, and it just didn't get off the ground a few times because what I want to tackle is, I call it persistence, which is we want some things to carry over from one level to the next. So your health, what weapons you picked up, we'll eventually have some ammo, I think, like limited ammo, so we'll want to track that. And there are a bunch of different ways to do it, and I've done a few trial runs and hit stumbling blocks with them because basically this is a topic that hasn't come up much in my own games because of various complicated things. So we want some things from a scene to continue to exist. Let's look at our scene. It's a bit of a mess right now. We have a lot of different things that some of these things are prefab, some are not. Some it makes sense for them to be only in this one level. Other things are sort of meant to be universal. So like the player is not a prefab, and it's in every level. So there's a different player in every level basically. And if we ever change the player, it's going to be different in different levels, which is crazy. We definitely don't want that. The canvas is a prefab and level manager is a prefab. These three things are things we want to stay persistent. We want those to stick around and come with us to the next level. So one of the things you can do is you can set them to don't destroy unload, and we're going to do that one, so I won't go into the technical detail yet because we will do it step by step. But the idea is you flag certain items as like when we go to a new scene, don't destroy this one. Where that can get tricky is if you have a lot of items, a lot of objects that are all talking to each other, they all have references to each other and they depend on each other existing. So if some of them are don't destroy and load and some of them are not, you could have problems there. The method that we're going to use, or the ones we're going to pick, we don't run into those problems, hopefully. So we should be good there. Another one, I just want to run through the other options just because you might hear of them and you might consider them, and I want to tell you what I found to be the case with them. Additive scenes. So you can... One way of making these things persist is we can have a separate scene that just has the player, level manager, and the canvas in it. And you can actually load two scenes at once. You can start with that one, then load level one on top of it, and the two just coexist. And it seems like quite a neat system. I've never used it, but when I tried for this series, what I found was there was a problem where now instead of just saying load scene 2, load level 2, we have to say unload level 1 and additively load level 2. And then there's certain things you need to do to that level to start it up. And I found you couldn't do those things in the same frame. So then you've got to have code to wait to the next frame because the data hasn't loaded. It's everything gets loaded asynchronously. So you get into this weird thing where the frame after you've written a line of code, that line of code actually hasn't been done yet. It's just been asked to be done, and who knows what will be done. You've got to sort of have that other code to check for has it been done yet. And that's too complicated for our purposes. That's just made the issue a lot more intricate than it needs to be. And then the other one is we could save data to disk, which would be kind of cool because then you've got a save game system. And hopefully I will get to saving information in some manner, just so you have a basic knowledge of that. For taking the player from one level to the next, I started to realize this is actually a pretty complicated way of doing it because you're going to have a whole list of weapons in your inventory, and if we add ammo counts to those weapons, every weapon has to have its own set of data that it is going to save. So the player saves a list of weapons, then each weapon has to save a list of its own traits. And then when we load them, we need a sort of reference file of where do I get all these weapon prefabs from, to instantiate them, and I just found that was actually a bit of a heavyweight solution. So the simplest thing to do is don't destroy and load, and we're going to do that. So like I say, I want the player, the level manager, and the canvas to all not be destroyed when we change scenes. And I could go through and edit each, go into one of these scripts on each one of them and add don't destroy and load to it. But actually, one of the things that makes don't destroy and load a good approach is that if let me pick something that has children. If I made this enemy spawner don't destroy and load, so are its children. So the objects nested within it. And that's great for us because when the player owns weapons, they are nested within the player. So if we make the player don't destroy and load, all of his weapons will come with him too, which is neat. And so actually, why not do everything under one game object? So I'm going to create an empty game object. I'm going to call it essentials. And I'm going to reset its position just because I hate those random numbers that Unity always gives us. And then I'm just going to control-click player, canvas, and level manager and drag them all into essentials. So they're all children of essentials now. And their positions haven't changed or anything. The fact they're not sort of, we haven't really linked them in any meaningful way. We don't need to worry about positions and things. And now all we need to do is add a component here, which I'm going to call persistent. And once it lets us edit that, just checking recording. On start, should it be start? No, let's make it awake. That's the one that happens first. We will say don't destroy and load, brackets game object. You do this to a game object, not to this component. It's always to the parent game object, and that means everything beneath that will get that same property. And actually, I happen to know we're going to need a reference to this later. So this persistent class, let's go into references, which is over here, and we'll do a public static persistent called essentials. And now back in our persistent class, we're going to, I think I like doing that as the first thing we ever do in every class. References.essentials equals this. Okay, so just that one behavior on this parent object is going to make all these things persist. And I am going to make a change to our level to make it easier to complete, because we're going to need to complete it a lot to test this. So I'm just going to have one guard and one spawner to make it the easiest level I can. Actually, that could even be, no, I'm not going to mess with the, the weapon selection yet. Okay, so now I just want to complete this level to check that, to see what happens. It's going to break, but I want you to see in what way it breaks. I mean, first thing to show is that it all works. Huh. That isn't the result I expected. I expected a crash. But, oh, let me check. I want to zoom around the scene and just look at something. Okay, well that was a confusing level transition anyway. But actually, let's look at what has happened here, because behind the scenes, this is just a bit of trivia, I guess, but when I told this not to destroy and load, it actually sort of treats that like a scene, right? This is when I talked about additive scenes, like loading scenes at the same time. This is what that looks like. This is a scene and this is a scene. But we didn't have to create that, and we don't have to manage when it gets loaded and when it doesn't. So don't destroy and load is basically doing the additive scene approach, but just it's easier for us. Code-wise, it was real simple. So the problem that I'm sure we must have hit, although it doesn't look like it, why is this working so well? This really shouldn't work as well. Is that in the next scene, something's going weird with our shotgun. Yeah, okay, the problem that is happening, there's another player in the scene. So there's already a player, there's already a level manager, there's already a canvas. I'm not seeing as many problems as I would expect from this, but all those things existing twice is a real bad idea. So, okay, well that's easy, Tom, just delete those elements from level 2. Sure, but then it's a bit weird that that level 1 has this special property. Like if we ever switch the levels around, if we decide level 1 should actually be level 2 and rename them, now we've got to remember that there's this special essentials thing in level 1. We've got to take that out and put it into level 2. The method I prefer is to have a dedicated startup scene that is just going to have the essentials in and nothing else. And that way every level is the same kind of thing. Levels will never contain this essentials object. So, in order to move this to a new scene, I'm going to make it a prefab by dragging it into our assets folder. I'm actually, while I'm at it, I'm going to, well, first of all, let's open that prefab. Now, Canvas and Level Manager are already prefabs. I'm going to right-click on them and say Unpack Prefab in both cases, because I actually think that's pretty confusing that we have these prefabs nested within each other. So I'm also going to find these in our project folder and just delete them, which might seem drastic, but it's nice. like, you can have nested prefabs, and sometimes that is useful. But what often happens is that now there's 3 different versions of that thing, because there's the in the scene there's the instance of it, then within the essentials prefab there's essentials instance of it, which could vary from its original prefab, and then there's the original prefab, which could also vary from those 2 as well. So that then you're getting to really hairy territory. So I like to, unless I specifically need one of these things to be a prefab for some reason, then I prefer for them none of them to be, and essentials is the only prefab that we need to worry about. And I'm going to delete it because we don't want it to be in level 1. What we want it to be in is a scene, which I'll create now. Create scene that I'm just going to call startup. So that should be easy to remember. While we're here, you might have this too. There's a sample scene folder. I'm just going to delete it. These folders, that Unity creates these automatically. They store the nav mesh data, or that's that thing that tells the AI where it can and can't walk. So even if you deleted one that is for a legit level, it doesn't really matter. It'll recreate it. But sample scene is just an old level name that we don't have anymore, so it's just confusing to have that sticking around. Now that we have that, let's... I don't love that view. Okay, this is better. Let's find our essentials prefab that we just created. I believe it's that one. Put that in there, and that's it for startup scene. So what we want to happen is the game will always start on startup scene. We will always launch from there, and then as soon as startup scene is loaded, we want it to load level 1, right? We don't actually want to spend any time here. The player's not really going to see this. So let's do that in Level Manager. Level Manager, it makes sense for that to be the thing that moves us on to the first level, right? It's managing levels. I am going to put this here, and I'm going to say Scene Manager. So there's another thing we can fix here. Load scene. What we've been doing previously is we set up a reference to a scene asset, and then we got its name from there. Let me see if I can find that. Okay, so here we do Scene Manager load scene next level.name, which seemed like a good idea because if that level ever gets renamed, it doesn't matter. Our code will update. But it turns out, if anyone has tried to compile a game, and I know some people have, it won't work because this scene asset data type is like an internal one only. It's not designed to be used in games that you ship. I don't know what the hell it's doing there. It seems like a good system to me to be able to reference a scene asset the same way you reference any other kind of asset, but apparently we can't. So what I want to write here is the name of the first level, and instead of creating a scene asset, I'm going to create a public string for first level name. And it's a bit of a shame that if we ever change the name of the first level, that will not update, but it does allow our game to compile, which is a fairly big upside, so we've got to do it. And while we're here, let's change the next level one as well to be a string, and we'll call it next level name, and then we'll get an error here. And so instead of referencing the next level and finding its name, we're just going to pass in this string, this word. So now we've got 2 fields we need to fill in when we get back to Unity. I've saved. And let's be extra cautious and do this. I could, make essentials not a prefab now. Should I do that? Yeah, let's stick to the letter of the law of what I said. There's no reason for there to be 2 different versions of essentials, right? Now there's a prefab version, then there's the instance that's in the startup scene. Since the startup scene, the whole point of it is to contain the essentials, and there's only ever be one copy in the startup scene. Like this one will be the only copy of this ever. There's no reason for it to be a prefab, so I'm going to unpack that one and delete the essentials prefab down here. So that's just keeping our, our project is 1 file smaller now, and there's this thing, there's only 1 version of it. It can't ever disagree with itself, to put it that way. So Level Manager, I thought of that because if I was going to edit Level Manager now, editing an instance for a prefab is always, you've got to catch yourself doing that and ask yourself, do I really mean to do that, or do I want the prefab to change? And in this case, that question is almost meaningless, right? Because these 2 things should never be able to vary from each other. So first level name is going to be level 1. Next level name, let's just write in level 1. No, let's write level 2, because that's intuitive, but we're going to change that later, because hopefully you can already see the problem here. We've made this universal and global, and it applies everywhere, but it stores the name of the next level, which is something that should depend on what level you're on, right? At level 1, the next level is level 2. On level 2, the next level should be level 3. So the fact that we're having to declare a global, a sort of universal answer to that question makes me think that field is in the wrong place. It should be somewhere else, but that will be probably one of the last things we fix today. So that should work, right? If I just play now, level manager should load up level 1. Yeah, perfect. So we didn't even see the startup scene, did we? And the player won't either, so that's nice. It's a surprisingly difficult game if you don't get a railgun. I don't actually need to test this transition because we already tested that and nothing's changed in that way. So let me look at my notes. I have moved all these things to essentials. I've got a step-by-step guide for myself this time because I've done so many versions of this in practice that I didn't want to get mixed up with what version we're actually going with. We've done that, we've done that, we've done that. Yes, so our new game button is not going to work anymore. Let me show you that not working. Wow, does nothing at all. Okay, it's not the outcome I expected, but I'm not surprised it doesn't work because our way of starting a new game is different now. We launched the startup object, and this needs a bit of thought because new game is kind of conceptually different now. Now that we have some persistent stuff sticking around, we don't want that to persist when we click new game. New game is the one time that we want to lose this data, right? That's what new game means, is throw away our current progress, start afresh, recreate it all. And so just going to the startup scene won't do that because we said that essentials should never be destroyed. So we'd go to the startup scene and we'd get another copy of everything. And that would also be don't destroy and load. So then they'd both come over to the new scene and that would be hell. So we want to actually destroy it. And that is why we set up a reference to it. So level manager is the logical place for this, and I'm going to create a new method for it. We don't have it right now. Let me actually remind myself, what is, so in our main menu, this is in our canvas, it's just called button at the moment, but it should be called new game button. That is, let me turn this on so everything's nice and visual. That is what I'm talking about, this one. If I uncheck it, it disappears. That's our new game button, and we have this nice system where we can hook up any button to any function on any object, and whatever we had here is missing now. I don't remember where it was, but that explains why the button does nothing in game. And so I want to set up a function for it to execute, and I'm going to do that in Level Manager. I'm going to do a public void. I'm going to put start new game. And what do we want that to do? So we do want to load scene manager, load scene, not level 1, not first level name, but startup, which is our special thing that we only ever do at the start of the game. But like I say, we don't want those essentials sticking around, so let's destroy those first, I think. Destroy references.essentials, and there's a gotcha here because I made this mistake. I wrote that first, and that is wrong, because essentials is a reference to the persistent behavior, that component of the thing. Destroying that's no good. We want to destroy the whole game object. So you've got to say .game object here. And then there is one more problem with this, but let's hit it. Let's hit it head on. So you can see what it is. We're still in startup, so I should be able to just click play. I probably shouldn't have enabled that. No, I shouldn't. That was stupid. Let's get out of this. I enabled that just so you could see what I was talking about. Not just the new game button, the whole main menu should not be enabled on startup. When I start the game and bring it up and I play a new game, seemingly nothing happens for two reasons. One is I forgot to hook up the button, didn't I? New game button, I want it to, it's going to reference something on Level Manager now, so this is the slot it's going to go into. I'm going to drag Level Manager over here. We're just plugging in the object for now, not the function. Now that it's in there, I can click function, and the menu I get is like, which component of it do I want to trigger something on? And well, obviously I want it to be on the Level Manager, and it's the start new game function. So that's one reason it didn't work. There's another one though. There's more. Start new game, and I'm in this weird state. It seems to have loaded, right? That's a new level, it's different to last time, but I can't move or do anything. because when you're in the menu, time is paused. If you are going to come out of the menu, you need to remember to set timescale to 1. So timescale is 0 when you're in the menu. So after we launch everything, we want to be unpaused. So let's just show that that works. That is a new level. It just looks very similar to the last one. Okay, cool. And actually, one thing we want to sort of prove is I picked up a shotgun here. I picked up other stuff. No, I haven't, just one. And I don't have that when I do new game. It does correctly lose our data, is what we want. So now the next thing to do is to check that we can go from one level to the next. And I am going to delete our level 2, because our level 2, we haven't looked at it in a while. It's not set up like other things. We made it when we had some bad practices in place, like we duplicated a scene that had a bunch of things in it that are not prefabs but do need to be the same everywhere, and we want to get away from that now. So I'm just going to, is it Control D? Yeah. If I select level 1 and do Control D, I get a level 2, and it's going to be identical. So I know that this level doesn't have the level manager, doesn't have the player in it, all that stuff. But I do want to know, when we get to level 2, I want to know we're there, so I don't want it to be exactly the same as level 1. And in fact, there was one more little prefab thing we need to do, isn't there? I'm going to delete the level generator, bear with me here, from level 2, because I just realized it should have been a prefab already. Let's go to level 1, make that version of prefab. If I'm going to make something a prefab, I want to get rid of the other instances of it before I even do that, just so that there's no confusion. Okay, so it's a prefab now. Now we're going to level 2. This is one of the few things that we want to be... I guess there's quite a few things like this, where it's going to be multiple levels. We want it to be basically the same object, at least. It's not a complicated object, it's just got one component on it. So you might think it wouldn't hurt to have just independent instances with no prefab. But when we're setting things like defaults, we might want that to propagate across all our levels. With 2 levels, it's not a huge deal, but once we've got like 10, you can imagine, all these lists and stuff. If we customize these a lot, we want that to update in every level, right? And then each level can vary from there. So this is going to be a prefab in the truest sense, where it's got some shared stuff, and we're going to customize each one. Because what I want to do now is say that level 2 is different to level 1 in that it has 2 guards and 4 enemy spawners. You see those go bold because they're variants from their differences to the parent prefab, not parent, from the master prefab, the original prefab. This is now an instance that is different, and level 1s is kind of the standard one, but that's not really important. We could customize level 1s independently as well. So one thing you've got to be careful of from now on is it matters, like to test level 2, I actually can't just click play because we don't have the essentials in level 2, do we? We need to go from startup each time. If we get into a situation where we often want to check a later level, we'll just have a different way of getting to them. So I need to win this one. And there's no railgun, which is a real shame because that's kind of the only good weapon in the game. We're going to fix our weapons. I think shotgun... Problem with shotgun is it's a little bit unreliable and you need to get close, and when you're close they can really kill you. Whoa! I walked right in front of the spawner. Okay. So, soon, okay, we've hit an obvious problem. Right now we just appear wherever we already were, which in this case has left me inside the wall. But, okay, we did go to a new level though. We've hit an exciting new problem in the new level, but we did go to a new level. It didn't crash the game or anything. So let's fix that next, since that is a problem we have now hit in a very obvious way. What we want is, we do want the player to carry over, that's correct, but the player's position is not a piece of data we want to preserve, actually. Like, where you happen to be in the level when the level moves on is not a big deal. One way you could get around this is if every level had an exit you have to walk to, and the exit's always in the same place, then we just, have ensured in gameplay logic that they will always be in a place we expect them to be. But actually, I don't think that's the best solution for us, and it's certainly not the easiest. The easiest is to, somewhere in the scene, I'm going to create I guess I'm going to do it here, create a cube. I'm going to reset its transform, so it's more or less at 0, 0, 0. I'm going to, if we look at that, that is now buried in the floor, just like our player is. The reason I picked a cube is because our player is a cube, and so we'll see if the player starts at this transform, here's what it would look like, they'd be buried in the floor. So we're going to have to give it a y of 0.5 so that it's at the same height the player would be. And now I'm actually just going to put you off to the side there. That's where the player's going to start. I call this a starting position. I'm going to add a component to it called starting position. All one word. And this is going to be real simple. It's just going to, it won't even need a reference to it. It's just going to on start references dot the player dot transform dot position equals transform dot position. So as soon as the level starts, I'm going to grab the player and say, hey, you come here. You're going to be here. This is your spot. And I actually think this isn't necessary, but this starting position only exists to do that. Once it's done it, we don't need any more. I'm going to destroy it because just so that, you know, fewer bugs can happen if things you don't need no longer exist, probably. Is that true in general? No, but in this case, it seems tidier to me to delete the thing as soon as it's done its job. So that will work here. The two things I want to do, important thing is it's got a collider on it right now. We don't want to collide with it, so we'll uncheck that. And actually I also don't want to see it, so I'll uncheck the mesh renderer. So now it's invisible and immaterial. It doesn't need to be a cube. You could make an empty game object. The reason I did, like I say, is because I want to see where the player will be if they spawn here, and that catches the very obvious problem that they're buried in the floor. If you just made an empty game object, it wouldn't be obvious that was going to happen. And now that we've got that how we want it, let's make it a prefab, because I do want these in each level, and they can be in different spots in each level. In fact, let's make that one of the differences. If I go to level 2, save, then I can drag a starting position here. Oh, it actually did it preserve its... Let's turn on its mesh renderer so we can see where it is. Again, that's paying off. Oh yeah, so it preserved its position in this case, but I don't want it to be there, I want it to be over here. I happen to know that these sides are always clear on our level. That side is not always clear, right? If you're there, there's a chance it might spawn a block right in the middle of you. There are some sweet spots, like where it's always a corridor between those blocks, so you could place a starting position like there or there, if you knew that exact position. And you could turn on the chunks, I guess, to test that, but the simplest thing is just to put them at the side. So back to startup. Let's test. Okay, and railgun, thank you. We are going to change the game so that this is not the only good weapon, just so you know. Clear that level, and okay. It moved me to the right position, but we have another problem, which is the alarm is already going off when we get to the new level. So, let's just check our new game button works. Yes, it does. Let's fix that. And in fact, I spotted something that I didn't spot in my practice, which is that when Level Manager starts up, we set up the alarm level, and actually we don't want to do that just once at the start of the game. That's really a per level thing. So there is a line of code that takes us to the next level. Go to the next level. We labeled it very nicely. I want the alarm to stop before we go to the next level. So we could do it here, but actually I was already thinking, after you've cleared the enemies and you're just waiting for the next level to kick in, it's good that we have that grace period, remember, we have seconds before next level. Really, that's when I want the alarm to stop. And so I want to write something here that says stop alarm. But our alarm manager, which I'm going to do Control-T and jump to it, that doesn't have a way of stopping the alarm right now. We can raise the alert level, and I think we can instantly sound the alarm, but we can't unsound the alarm, because we didn't think we'd need it. But actually we do need it. So public void stop the alarm. And what's that going to do? It's going to be alert level equals 0, and update pips. Remember those pips on screen, we need to tell them anytime something changes, because they need to, you know, reflect that. We don't need to actually stop the sound, because if you remember, our sound logic is nice and clean, which is, it is always checking. Is the alarm on, and is the sound playing? because if it's on and it's not playing, it should be playing, and if it's off and it is playing, it shouldn't be playing. So yeah, this code nicely handles that. So now we do have the function we want. So level manager is going to do it. References.alarm manager dot stop the alarm. And yeah, this, shall we try and fix this too? That is one that's going to happen. Let's leave that for a bit. Let me just show you that this works first, because I think that's going to come into, I think we might move that to level generator. So let's steal the railgun. So the siren stopped early, didn't it? And now the alarm is not on. So that's cool. We should check. No, we'll check that in a minute. Yeah, so this bit, let's do this alongside the other problem I mentioned, which was that level manager has this idea of what the next level is. What I'm looking to do, remember how we made level 2 different? We went into this level generator and we changed the values here. This is the level generator. We could almost call it a level config now. And I might do that. Like the level generator script still makes sense, but let's rename the object to level config. And I will rename the file. And that doesn't actually affect it in the scenes, so don't worry about that, I guess. It's not that important. But let's first give this a next level name. So just double click it to edit the code. We're going to do a public string next level name. You could also just paste this from where it already exists in level manager, because it already exists here. I'm going to delete that so we don't lose track of what we're doing, and a bunch of things will throw up errors. What I want to do, what I want to write here is go to the level generator and find this info from there. But actually we don't have a reference to that yet. Level generator doesn't have an awake that sets up a reference. So let's go to references and do that first. Public static level generator, excuse me, level generator, level generator. Yeah, I'm not going to rename it to config because it's just going to confuse the issue. But just to let you know, that is the spirit in which we're doing this. So now level generator does want an awake, and it's going to go references dot level generator equals this, and then level manager, where it wants to know where it's going to get its next level name from, it's going to be references. Hit Control J to make it autocomplete. Level generator dot next level name. So now that can vary per scene, per level. So level 1 can have level 2 as its next level, level 2 could have level 3 as its next level, although we don't have one yet. So let me set that up. Level 2, actually its next level should just be level 1 for now. We'll just have the game loop, just so it doesn't, run out of stuff. Should this have updated? Oh, it has. Level 1. Because we're in level 2 right now. And if I go to level 1, then its level generator should have a next level name of level 2. I don't even think we need to test that, because that seems pretty solid. I mean, we'll test it, but we can do something else first as well, which should be the alarm manager thing I mentioned. So I'm thinking that this level generator, this sets up the level, right? This is what this does. On start, it runs through and creates all this stuff. To me, this is the place where it makes sense to set up the alarms. References dot, why am I rewriting it? Let's copy it, or rather cut and paste, because it should no longer be here. I hope this is going to work. It might be an order of operations thing. I'm going to cut this and then go to level generator. How have I lost level generator? Yeah, just going to put it there, I think. Let's see if that works. That's just after creating the whole level. It seems like putting it first, there's an argument for that, because it was already doing it before this ran, and that was fine. But actually, since we're doing this on level generator, where it has all the config about the level, why not make it a variable? We can, while I'm here, I'm going to move this variable up top. And we'll also have a public int for alarm levels. And that will be what we use here. Instead of it always being 3, now it's a thing we can configure per level. So we can have a more generous level and a easier one. Always nice to get some new functionality. So level 1's going to be 3. I guess let's try level 2 being different to that. Oh, yeah, it's fine. Alarm levels 4. So now we're going to test a whole bunch of stuff at once. This is going to test whether we correctly transition from levels. Oh, that's not right. Why is it 6? Is it doing it twice, perhaps? We did get rid of it from level manager. Oh, I didn't save level manager. It's annoying that you have to manually save. I have an autosave thing going with my main setup. Ooh, we got a little honk from the alarm there. That wasn't desired. Okay, so it's got 3, and hopefully when I win this level, which I will do easily, we should find... No, they all stacked up. Okay, that might just be that our alarm manager doesn't yet have any way of removing pips ever, because it never had to in the past, right? Really, before it sets it up, it should clear any existing ones, but that's not difficult to do. Let me just check. That is 7, isn't it? Yeah. So it was correctly trying to create 4. It just didn't get rid of the old ones. So that's just probably a fairly easy tweak. When somebody tells us to set up the level, we can no longer assume that no other level has ever been set up. We are going to... we not only want to clear the alert pips list, so we will want to clear that list. When you do that, that just wipes the list itself. It doesn't do anything to the objects that were in the list. It takes the things off the list, basically. It doesn't destroy the things itself. So before we do that, we want to do a for int I equals 0, semicolon, I less than alert pips dot count. That's how many of them there are. I++, which is what we'll do each time we cycle through. We'll just destroy alert pips alert pips I. So this one, we can hang on, let me make sure we destroy its game object, not just the component. So if the first time we run the game, there won't be any existing ones. So you might ask, why aren't we checking? Are there any alert pips? I could do an if. If alert pips count is greater than 0, then do this. We don't need to, because this says for, however many numbers there are between 0 and the alert pips count, do this. Well, if the alert pips count is 0, then it will do it 0 times. So the if statement is kind of already implicit in this. You don't need a separate if statement for that. And then we'll clear the list. That looks good to me. Let me check that I'm right. It's funny, that little alarm honk each time. I wonder what that is. Whoa. Oh, I destroyed the guard. I forgot I could do that. Oh, that just ends the level. Yeah, okay, cool. Now we've got 4 alert pips. So I can steal more stuff. Oh yeah, let me check that actually works. Yeah, I can steal 3 things and the alarm doesn't go off. So it does respect that number. And we're not going to play that through. Cool. That's pretty solid. How are we doing on time? That was about 45 minutes. So that's not a bad amount for the episode. Let me just see what else was on my docket. We have destroyed the essentials, we've gone to the next level, we've made start positions, we've moved the next level variable to the level generator so it can change per thing, created level 2, that was it. Yeah, the other thing we could do is give ammo counts to the weapons, because that's one of the things that will be interesting to persist. Cool, the railgun's powerful, but maybe it only comes with 5 shots. You use 4 of those on this level, Yes, thank you. Then your railgun is a lot less useful on the next level. You've only got one shot left, and now you're going to really have to think about what you take. So I think we'll do that in a future episode, because it's not super quick, because we need to do things like create a UI to show the ammo count. I also, while I was working on this, I started to make a list of things that were sort of bothering me that I want to fix. Our shotgun's really weak, and it fires bullets right now, which means they have to do the same amount of damage as an Uzi pellet. And they should actually be their own thing. They should be shotgun shells that are like big and chunky and do heavy damage. Guards should have pistols, not Uzis, because Uzis are terrifying, and especially at close range, Uzis just shred you in a way that isn't very fair. And oh yeah, the player is, although it looks like a box, I want it to be a cylinder, so that when you try and turn against a wall, you don't get like caught on it, because that feels bad. And I want the use prompt to I want the use ability to actually tell you when you're in range or something to pick it up, and also just give it a bigger range in general. So it's easier to like rush around and grab those things before the alarm locks them all off. So that'll be a bunch of feel stuff. Obviously, we need to make some more weapons and stuff at some point. But really, we're just setting up assistance just lets us get to the point that it matters to make that stuff. Like when every new level reset the whole game, it was hard to care about any of this stuff. And now, each level can play out differently depending not only on the variables we set up for it, but also what the player state is based on previous levels. And then it gets worth making 5 levels and stuff. I guess maybe it's worth sort of explicitly saying it was intentional and generally a good idea to not make a whole load of levels yet. We had 2, and even then I just deleted the second one today and duped the first one, because the stuff about just what a level is, what a level needs to contain and doesn't, is going to change so much that it would be a nightmare if we'd made 10 levels already. I need to go in and manually fix each one. It's good to start very content light, and in a game that has random generation in it, that's really easy to do. Because you can still play the game without having to build a lot of stuff. So next time it'll be ammo counts and maybe some of this stuff, or if I think of something more important, then it'll be that instead, or as well.